So a quick recap before we start. Just check if the mic is working. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just a quick recap. So last session we talked about dynamical models for gene regulatory networks, signaling networks, and other type of networks. How you can model these networks using differential equations and chemical kinetics, laws of mass action, and how you can create these differential equations, how you can solve them. We talked about various methods of parameter estimation as well. So uh, today we are going to talk about a method for parameter estimation, or optimization, uh, known as genetic algorithms. So uh, these are types of algorithms that are derived from what are known as evolutionary algorithms, which uh, base their logic on evolutionary phenomena like mutation, crossover, natural selection, etc. We'll see in detail uh, how uh, how they are done. But yeah, so this will be a typically a shorter session than other sessions because primarily for this week you've only had genetic algorithms to learn. You've had other guest lectures, but for your coursework you only had to had videos for genetic algorithm and also Pigmo. We'll talk about the Python package a little bit towards the end. And yeah, so let's get started. So first is the concept of evolutionary algorithms. So what is evolutionary algorithms or what is evolutionary computation? It basically integrates the principles of biological evolution into algorithms for solving complex optimization and design problems. So basically, how evolution occurs, how like across random events these mutations occur, and how these mutations bring about changes in the organism. Talking from a biological point of view, how these mutations bring about changes in organisms, and how the best mutation or the best adaptable organism is naturally selected for further propagation. So the similar concepts are applied here, but this is from a computation point of view. So, huh. So computationally, what this means is here, like you can draw analogies with the biological evolution. Here, the chromosomes are basically um, like described as a set of solutions, and each of these the chromosomes are made up of single units, which are genes, which are basically the individual solutions, and so on. So we have a whole analogy with the original biological evolution and these algorithms. So we design our algorithms in such a way that it follows those evolutionary concepts. Now the point is, what is the use of doing this? What is the use of doing this kind of algorithms? So uh, the thing is, in maximum of the cases, as in last session also we saw the examples of some dynamical models. So as you saw that the number of equations and the number of constraints were very high. So last day we saw methods of like computing solutions for differential equations through numerical methods, but those also like fail when you have too many of constraints and too many optimizations to do. So this is an alternative to that. So the primary use case for evolutionary algorithms is to use it in a very much um, uh, complex scenarios. Say, like you have a lot of equations and you have a lot of constraints and boundaries, and there are multiple possible solutions. So in those cases, when you do not want an exact solution, You just want like you want a guided solution for the equations and the model, and basically I yeah it's more of a trial and error method. So there is no guarantee of getting an exact solution. So these type of algorithms are only used when you're trying to uh, trying out big complex problems. So, examples of applications include optimizing internal combustion engines for fuel efficiency, or say graph analysis for identifying fully connected subgraphs. We talked about in the earlier sessions about modularity, about community detection. So, those are also like complex optimization problems where you have to like conform to a lot of constraints. So, there also these evolutionary algorithms are used, and also primarily yes, in solving biological problems like sequence alignment, phylogenetic inference, and drug design. Uh, and like what kind of the next part is what kind of evolution questions does these algorithm answer? Like what I mean to ask is, if you are applying this algorithm, what what is the result you expect? What kind of inferences do you want to make from this algorithm? So the theoretical questions are in uh, evolutionary computation are, firstly, how quickly do well adapted individuals emerge? So there's a concept of mutation. So in evolutionary biology, uh, if a gene is mutated, or if an organism undergoes some sort of mutation or variation, and that brings about a difference in its phenotype, or in its uh, in any part of it, which basically helps it adapt better to the environment. So those kind of mutations uh, will undergo natural selection and be propagated into the future generations. Similar analogy can be drawn here. So here also you try to randomize these solutions of multiple equations, and you try to kind of meaning mutate. Here also is a concept of mutation. So here mutating meaning like changing one solution out of a set of solutions. So these kind of mutations, you bring it about, and you see which is giving you the optimum solution. So you'll have a fitness function. We'll talk about fitness functions. So you'll have a cost function or an optimizing function that you need to minimize or maximize. Depending on that, you want a set of solutions. And uh, other questions that it can answer is basically what characteristics of evolved objects are outcomes of the evolutionary process, or how do population structures and selection mechanisms impact this diversity. So you can change these structures. We will talk about population and other things. You can change these structures, and you can see how it is impacting your solution set. And uh, in the context of biology, functional genomics is a field which is uh, in which these evolutionary algorithms are very well used for genomic organization and protein structure prediction studies. So, moving on. So, genetic algorithms are a subset of these evolutionary algorithms, and there are various types of genetic algorithms, but the main like parts of a genetic algorithm are basically population and a fitness function. There are other operators inside in the algorithms, but the, for creating a genetic algorithm, the essential things needed are a population and a fitness function. So, what is a population? So here, if you see this figure, so the population here is denoted as a bit array. So these individual rows of these bit arrays, these are known as individual chromosomes, and these individual chromosomes hold together a set of solutions. And each unit of that chromosome is known as gene, this one. And this gene will hold a particular solution. So moving from bottom up, so you have your genes, which are the units of your chromosome, which will contain the solution, a particular solution or a solution. And these gene units will come together to make the chromosome, which will be a set of solutions. And these set of solutions will be present in a population together in kind of a 2D array, which is known as the population basically. So this population is defined using the first generation or F1. So say, like as in genetics, how we define population. So the first generation is known as the F1 generation, which basically is uh, you like your F0 will be your mother and father, and your F1 will be your like you basically your population will be F1. So uh, a population is defined using the first generation or F1. This can be a set of genes, chromosomes, or other units of interest. This is for actually example purpose, but this representation is actually very vital for generating these algorithms, because depending on your question, your representation may change. So uh, you may have other, like, say for example, you may have other types of layering inside it. So inside individual genes you can have subgenes, or kind of at the base pair level also you can have information, or you can have solutions. So like whatever units of interest are there, according to your problem, you can have different representations of these solutions, or chromosomes or population. But this is the general representation I wanted to show. And the most common technique uh, is used to use a bit array, where different permutations of zeros are once represent different genes, meaning different solutions. And most importantly, these genetic algorithms are modeled after Darwin's theory of evolution. And uh, like these basically follow the rules of biological evolution, and they use components of fitness, inheritance, and natural variation through recombination and mutation to model how a genetic lineage will change and adapt over time. Therefore, these components must also be incorporated into the genetic algorithm in order to accurately mimic natural selection. So the whole idea is based on biological evolution. So uh, here also we use the concept of fitness and natural selection through recombination and mutation, and try to find out how it changes and adapts over time. So we will see how we do that, but yeah, uh, the, the whole concept is based on Darwin's theory of evolution. So, before we go deeper into it, I just wanted to give an overview of a genetic algorithm. So, you have a initial population. So, the population will be the chromosomes with a set of solutions. So, you'll have a set of solutions for your problems as initial solutions. Then you have a fitness calculation here. So you'll have a fitness function which you have to optimize. So basically, you'll calculate the fitness values. So you can have the fitness function as yourself. So you can have it as say for example, uh, say you have two functions for say for example you do sum of square residuals. You try to optimize that function, and the minimum residual will have the maximum fitness value, something like that. So you can have your function according to yourself. It is important to choose the fitness function accordingly, according to your model and the question you are trying to answer, because ultimately your fitness function will decide if a particular chromosome is fit for next generation or not. So uh, that you have to keep in mind while determining the fitness function. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but yeah. So the fitness function is an important thing to basically identify for a particular model or particular set of equations. And then what is known as a crossover. So we'll talk about crossover in a bit. So basically what it sounds like. So as in crossover we have in meiosis, so a part of the chromosome of the father is basically swapped with the part of the chromosome of the mother, and then you get the daughter chromosome, and that is how basically we describe variance in terms of phenotypes across trios of mother, father, and son or daughter. So basically that is where your variability comes from. So that is why you inherit some of your mother's and some of your father's features. So that is the whole concept. And so the whole analogy can be applied here. Yes, in the case that here you represent the chromosome as a set of solutions to your problem, and crossover is basically you have two chromosomes basically containing solutions to your problem, and then you swap part of these solutions out of one another. So basically, say you have first I'll show you illustrations later, but basically you out of eight solutions, say you keep first of the four from the first, four from the second, and similar with the other one. So this is kind of making like recombination or a crossover. So this kind of randomization is known as crossover, and we'll see how we do it in here. And then we do what is known as a mutation. So and everything just to like uh, keep one thing in mind, everything happens here with a probability. So there is a probabilistic value associated with it. These are all random processes that are happening. So there's a distribution of these processes, and you're randomly picking from this distribution, and like according to that probability, if you're either mutated or you're crossed over or whatever is happening to you. So these are all associated with the probability. Now this probability value depends on the fitness of your particular set of solutions. So uh, th- this is how it basically optimizes. So the mutation kind of events occur also. So in mutation, basically a particular solution is changed or deleted or inserted, whatever can happen. And then the selection procedure, how do you select for the next generation? That is again done using fitness calculation. And if it is matching certain criteria, you take a you do a basically terminate and return the best results. So you start and generate a random population of n chromosomes. Uh, then you check the fitness calculation. Accordingly, you do crossover mutation. Then you do selection based on some criteria, and then you do fitness calculation again. If it is the best, you terminate and give result. Otherwise, you continue in this loop and until terminated or your basically termination condition is reached. You basically like uh, do this loop. So one thing to keep in mind here, uh, we'll talk about it in the next slide as well. The fitness calculation or the fitness function in the selection is very important, because according to your fitness function, your the solutions or your chromosomes will be passed or not passed to the next generation. So the the selection of your fitness function is very important, and also uh, we'll talk in the next slide only. Okay. So what is the fitness function basically? So you can think of it as a cost function you are trying to optimize. So there's some sort of a function uh, that is specific to your goals and specific to what you are trying to do, and you're trying to minimize or maximize that function. So a fitness function is basically a function that will evaluate how well a design solution meets specified goals. In genetic programming and genetic algorithms, design solutions are represented as a string of numbers that we saw in the earlier slides in chromosomes. So will have some sort of a bit array or a bit vector, and this function assigns a figure of merit to each solution based on test or simulation results. So basically, it will assign a certain score to all the chromosomes, basically all your solutions, and based on the score, uh, it will be determined whether uh, your set of solutions will pass on to the next generation or not. So it basically assigns a figure of merit to each solution. So why is it important? It determines which design solutions are retained and which are discarded, which I was telling you right now. And it is also essential for guiding evolutionary process towards desired outcomes. So you want your basically fitness function to converge at certain point, whatever be your terminating criteria, but ultimately you want your fitness function to converge at the lowest, basically the global minima or the maxima, however you are viewing your fitness function. So you ultimately want it to converge to somewhere. So if you choose a function like that is basically impossible or very hard to converge, so it will be very difficult for you to get a good result, because your fitness function will not guide the process towards the outcome. It will be like a randomized uh, movement, but it will not move towards your optimum solution. So this can happen. So your choice of fitness function is very important. And another thing is, you can think of like very sophisticated fitness functions as well. So I said as an example, say a root mean square or something like that. But you can use very complicated uh, optimizing fitness functions, like say a complicated trigonometric cosine, something, a very complicated function, which is very which is obviously not rubbish. It has something to do with with the solutions you're trying to find. But the point is, you can have complicated functions like that, and there is no uh, what to say. If you think of it like that, uh, it will be better for your solutions as well. So you'll get better idea about, it'll give actually better scores based on the, it will be able to judge the merit better of the solutions according to your function. But the point is, if you have a very sophisticated function, it also means that the function will take up a lot of time to compute. And what it happens is, you'll basically you want to finish like run this in a computer. So this is anyway, this is a lot of, like, what to say, you this will be using a lot of computation power. So your fitness function, if very complicated, will take up a lot of time. uh, Basically, that is one disadvantage you can have. So your fitness function should also be designed in such a way that it is fast as well, the fastest possible, obviously keeping with the accuracy. Now, there can be different types of fitness functions, like I said. So there can be fixed, which basically which will assign a score with basically the same formula across all the generations. So you have a fixed function for calculating the error or calculating the basically the fitness. So that can happen, and another one that can happen is mutable. So in mutable, it can change over time. So basically, across generations, functions may also evolve with generations. So it'll assign different kind of scores in different generations. So that can also be possible. Like you can design a fitness function like that as well. And what is the fitness landscape? It represents the fitness of each possible chromosome. It helps visualization of the optimization process and identify optimal solutions. Basically, it will show you this whole solution space and where are the peaks, where are the troughs, those things basically. And uh, the definition of fitness function may require iteration, especially if desired solutions are not achieved. Interactive genetic algorithms involve external evaluation by humans to address this challenge. So it kind of basically, if your fitness function uh, like is meaning it may require iteration uh, if you're not getting your desired results. So your human intervention is like required at that time. So as I was saying, identifying the fitness function is a very important task for using genetic algorithms, if not the most important. Next, we come to genetic operators. Just a second. Next, we come to genetic algorithm operators. So we saw in this slide here. So this is basically a chromosome, a set of chromosomes making up a population. But what is this ones and zeros? These are basically binary encoding. So some solutions are encoded like this in ones and zeros. This encoding becomes very important when you are trying to address any kind of like depending on the problem you're trying to address. So you may require much more complex encoding, or you may require simple encoding, but all you have to keep in mind there can be other constraints on the encoding as well, as in it has to support mutation, crossover, these type of things. Like these can be easily done or not. These type of things also you have to keep in mind while doing the encoding. So encoding also becomes an important part of of basically trying to make this population, trying to make this chromosomes. So you have binary encoding. There are different types of encoding. Binary is the most simplest one. You have octal encoding, hexadecimal encoding, permutation, value, tree, etc. And the other processes, the other operators that are also used in genetic algorithm include selection, crossover, and mutation. We'll talk about this in a bit. But sorry, guys. So there can be various types of encoding, and there are other operators as well, like selection, crossover, mutation. We'll talk about these. So let's start with encoding. What is encoding in general? So it's basically you're converting an information to a particular format. So in machine learning, we use one-hot encoding. There are other types of encoding. Basically, say for example, you have categorical variables. So you want to do encoding of that. So you want to change the information from one type to another type. So basically, you're changing the format of that information. So and this encoding schemes are crucial in genetic algorithms. Uh, and these are crucial for converting this problem information into a suitable format. And different encoding schemes are utilized based on the problem domain, each with its advantage and limitation. So there are different types of encoding schemes. So first is the binary encoding scheme, which represents genes or chromosomes as strings of zeros and ones. These has a few pros that it is fast because of only 0 and 1, and it is very smooth over the operations of crossover and mutation. So nothing much to worry about. There are types of encoding, octal encoding, which can the genes can be represented as octal numbers or hexadecimal numbers 0 to 9, E to F, or you can even have permutation encoding. Basically, when the gene represents positions in a sequence. This position, different positions and permutations will give you different solutions. So there can be various types of encoding, and also like there are value encoding where uh, genes can be represented using strings of real or integer values. And this is useful when basically problems require more complex value representations, such as neural network. So in deep learning and neural network, value encoding is quite commonly used. Now, the things you need to consider while choosing your encoding scheme is basically it should be sustained. It should be basically suitable to the problem domain, and this efficiency of mutations and crossover handling. So if you see, we'll see in mutation and crossover handling how mutations occur and why is it easier for zeros and ones to mutate easier. Like obviously, it'll be easier, but see here are some pros and cons given. So in binary encoding, basically it is easy and faster, but there is no inversion operator. So there are basically cons to every type of encoding. Um, Permutation encoding, it supports in inversion operator, but there is no support for binary operators. So there are a few problems with every types of encoding. You need to choose your uh, encoding very careful depending upon your problem. Next is the concept of selection. So uh, it is kind of similar to what happens in biological evolution. So what happens is, in general, if there is a mutation and it happens to be good in terms of sustainability or reproduction or whatever, basically helping the animal to adapt to the environment better. So if a mutation like that occurs, that mutation is selected and propagated toward the next generation through basically survival of the fittest. If that mutation is leading to the organism being the fittest among its variations, so it and and pre, its and its ancestors basically will uh, propagate. I mean, that mutation will propagate through its future generations. So similar kind of a concept can be applied here. So here also we are doing that, those phenomena of mutations and crossovers and trying to find which is the best solution. So here also we are selecting for the best solutions. We're selecting for the fittest solutions. So the selection in genetic algorithms determines which individuals participate in reproduction, is basically which individuals will be passed on. And the convergence rate of the genetic algorithms is also influenced by selection pressure. So there can be you can adjust your selection pressure accordingly. You can put your selection pressure accordingly, and you can like you have that flexibility to do that and um, like select how many or like up to what values of fitness you want to propagate the solutions to the next generation or something like that. Basically, you can set your selection criteria, and the selection criteria will determine which uh, up to what cutoff basically of the fitness function will you select for the next generation. And there are different selection techniques. So one of them is roulette wheel. So it basically it is what it sounds. It maps individuals onto a wheel based on fitness, and but it suffers from stochastic errors. And there are other selection techniques also, like rank selection. It utilizes ranks instead of fitness values. So, but it like avoids or it reduces premature convergence. So basically, if your a global minima is very near to the solution, so it has a tendency to converge to that, but it may not be the global optimum solution. So it rank selection reduces this premature convergence, and tournament selection selects individuals in pairs based on fitness and reduces convergence to local minima. There are other selection techniques as well: stochastic universal sampling and Boltzmann selection. Boltzmann selection is based on entropy and sampling methods and also prevents premature convergence, but it may involve information loss. There's another thing, like another concept in selection known as elitism selection. So it basically ensures the best individuals or the best solutions is always propagated to the next generation. So this propagation is always basically under a probability. So there's some probabilistic values associated with which chromosomes will go to the next generation and not. So but you can ensure that the best fitness scored solutions should go on to the next generation basically. So you can set that criteria, like the best solution should propagate to the next generation irrespective of it being a chance event. In general should be a chance event depending on probability, but you can make sure that a particular solution is moved forward in the next generation, and it basically mitigates the loss of mitigates the risk of losing the best solution during selection. So by this you are also able to select the best of the solutions, and also you want if you want to keep certain solutions that you know will be good, or you know from experience that those are something those solutions should be good, so you can keep those kind of solutions and pass them on to the next generation through this elitism selection. These are different types of these selection techniques that I just talked about. Roulette wheel, it has its own pros and cons, so it is easy to implement. It's free from bias, but it has this risk of premature convergence. This rank method does it basically reduces this premature convergence, but it is computationally expensive, and is it is slow in convergence. So there are pros and cons for each selection technique. And elitism, as I talked about, it preserves the best individuals in the population, so that the best individuals can be lost due to mutation, and basically you want to preserve the best individual in the population using elitism. Next comes the concept of crossovers. So from biology, we know what a crossover is. So in terms of chromosome crossing over or recombination, in meiosis there is a stage where basically the chromatids, the sister chromatids, come one from the father chromosome from one of the parents, and the other comes from the other parent, the other daughter chromatid. Now, these two chromatids basically, these two basically chromosomes, daughter chromatids among themselves, they cross over a certain part of that that the DNA of from one part is replaced by the DNA of the other. So some part of your mother's chromosome will be cut off and replaced by your father's, similar with your father's. And that is how you get crossover, and basically that this crossing over crossed over chromosome is passed on to the next generations. So this is how the variance in among like parents and children are explained. Ki, like you inherit some traits from your mother, some traits from your father. There's always a mix up. Not your like there's a very low chance that you like have all the traits from only one person. That is also possible. It's not impossible, but uh, technique theory basically theoretically it's possible, but technically I don't think it is possible. I don't think there's always that chance. It's obviously a probabilistic event. Anything can happen, but the probability is too high. So you'll always inherit uh, traits from both of your parents, and these crossing over events basically aid in doing that, inheriting these genes. Now, here also the crossover operators are used to generate the offspring by combining the genetic information of two or more parents. Well-known crossover operators are single point, two point, k point, uniform, partially matched, ordered, etc. So there are a lot of crossover events. I'll describe a few here. Some illustrations are given here. Uh, so this is basically an example of a single point crossover. So a random crossover point is selected in both the chromosomes, and the genetic information, say these are two other parents, the genetic information of the two parents, which is beyond that point, will be swapped with each other. So basically, you see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this 5, 6, 7, 8 is swapped by 8, 5, 7, 6, 9. So the top chromosome has first part from itself, but the second part is from the other chromosome. Same is the case with the other one. So first part of itself, second part of the other chromosome. So this point of single point of crossover, you can imagine that as a basically a point from which the crossover is happening, from where you are cutting the DNA, or here from where you are separating the solutions. So these kind of crossovers are utilized in genetic algorithms, and basically this is what is known as a single point crossover. You can have 2 point and even k point crossovers. So in two or more random crossover points are selected, and the genetic information of the parents will be swapped as per the segments that have been created. So, for example, you imagine one segment is here and the other is here. So basically, you select 2 points basically at random, uh, and the genetic. So, you choose 2 points at random, and you swap out the genetic material from basically these two acting as boundaries. So you swap out this part. So 3, 4, 5, 6 swapped out with 3085. So this middle segment of the parents is replaced to generate the new offspring. So these are the new offsprings. These are the parents. Just swapped out the middle part. So if there are k such points, you can swap out k such part. K minus 1, sorry. Yeah, k minus 1 such parts. So depends on what kind of crossover you're doing. So that also depends on what like types of solutions you're trying to find. So how many and like how much crossover you'll do, that also depends on the question you're trying to answer. So in there's another type of crossover which is known as uniform crossover. uh, Here the parent is not cut or anything like that. So the parent is not decomposed into any kind of segments. anything. But each of these units are treated as separate genes, and you randomly decide if you want to swap out the gene for the other gene or not, but from the same location. So you have, this is your parent chromosome, so your father and the mother chromosome, and here just swap out some of the solutions. So 1 and 4 you swap out, 0 and 4 you swap out, 6 and 8 you swap out here. So you swap out certain solutions that you want, but you keep the rest of it. This is known as what is known as a uniform crossover. So various types of crossovers are possible. So I just wanted to give an overview about what crossover is and how basically these work. Okay, next we come to mutations. So first we talked about, so the whole structure, I want to give a quick recap. This is the whole structure. First we talked about how to make this population. This is how you make this population. Then how you do fitness calculation using fitness function. Then how you do crossovers. So these crossovers, mutation, these things are basically, these are optional. These are random events if that can happen. So these can also not happen. That is also scenario that can possibly be there, that there is no crossover or mutation, but there can be as well. So it depends. It's basically a random event that will occur. So we have talked about crossover. Now we'll talk about mutation. So similar to crossover, like the name is what it means basically. It, what is mutation? It's basically change in some DNA segment. It can be a sequence. It can be a single nucleotide. Can be anything. So there are certain mutation operators that can also be used in these genetic algorithms, and uh, there are certain common mutation operators like displacement mutation. So what it does, it displaces a substring within an individual solution, and it randomly selects a substring and displaces it to a new position. And variants include exchange mutations and insertion mutations. These are kind of, you can imagine as transpositions, transposable elements in the DNA. So one, they can travel from one part of the DNA to another. So uh, yeah, these are known as displacement mutations. There can be simple inversion mutations. So just reversing the substring between two specified locations. And um, like basically what inversion is. So when your DNA is basically mutated and inversion is occurring, certain base pair would be inverted and randomly basically inserted in a nearby or a random location basically. So uh, same thing is applied here. So it reverses the substring between two specified locations, and it randomly selects the substring and reverses it, and then places it at a random location. There's another mutation called scramble mutation, which basically randomly shuffles elements within a specified range of the individual solution and checks if the fitness of the resulting solution is improved or not. So basically changing the order of the solutions and checking the fitness function if the resulting solution is improved or not. You, just to keep one thing in mind, this crossover and the mutation events that you are doing, there is a reason why you are doing it. If there is an option of not doing it, why would you do it? But there is a reason why you are doing it, and the reason is that you want to have a better optimized solution. You want to have a better uh, value of a fitness function. So these random events you're trying to do in search of basically uh, optimizing the cost function like in the context of getting better solutions. So These mutations you do randomly, and you try to see if your resulting solution is improved or not. So basically, after crossover is performed, the next step is mutation. And mutation is deliberate to stop falling of all solutions into in the population into a local optimum of the solved problem. So it tries to scatter them out a little bit so that it does not go and converge to the local optimum only. And offspring results from crossover randomly changes by mutation operation. In binary encoding, we can switch some randomly selected bits from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. So here is the example given here. So your original offspring 1 have 1 in the fourth place. Your mutated offspring just changing that 1 to 0. Uh, Same with your original offspring 2. So you have a 0 here, which is mutated to 1. You have 1 here, which is mutated. Uh, if I'm wrong, not wrong, that one is not muted. Anyway, so you can just change it. Here the one is muted. So 0 is converted to 1. But in general, you can just swap these basically zeros and ones for binary encoding. If you remember, I talked about in the beginning that binary encoding is very crucial and very good for these doing these mutation operations, because you can just simply swap zeros and ones randomly, and which is a easier thing to do, which will be a much harder thing to do, uh, which will be a much harder thing to do if your encoding is very complicated. Next, we come to the last topic uh, for today, basically, which is Pygmo. It is basically a Python package. It is short for Python Parallel Global Multi-Objective Optimizers. It's a big name, but it is basically a optimization package, which has a few perks. So first is uh, it provides a consistent interface for both optimization algorithms and problems, which makes it easier to switch between different algorithms and problems without needing to rewrite your code. Next is it can parallel process very efficiently, which is a big plus point for this package. This is Python package, obviously. Uh, uh, it basically it has the ability to leverage parallel processing techniques, and this will allow you to distribute the workload among multiple processors, of course, significantly speeding up this optimization task. And in context of parallel processing, I want to also add this point here: the generalized idle model. It uses the Pygmo utilizes asynchronous generalized idle model island model for parallelization. This approach allows for independent subpopulations of or islands to evolve solutions and periodically migrate information between them. So basically, you have a set of uh, you have a particular core solving some equations, getting some values. In the next cycle, you are swapping those solutions with another core and trying to see if the solutions get better in the next generation or not. It's kind of like a random switching thing. So you can periodically migrate information between these islands, these small like you can, in our case we can use it as independent cores of the CPU. But yeah, can you can allow for these independent subpopulations to evolve these solutions and periodically migrate information. So that is also a big plus point. And another thing is it can handle this multi-objective optimization. So what happens is in most cases you won't have a single objective or a single fitness function. You'll have this like five or six constraints and equations together for the fitness function as well. So like you can have like multiple fitness functions for multiple generations, or like for one generation of only you can have multiple functions, some addition or something, you can have that. So uh, these multi-objective functions are multi-objective optimization becomes a little bit tricky. So generally the way it is done is you plot these out, how it is changing with changing parameters in the same plot, and the point at which it both interact is the lowest, the sum of both is the lowest. That's your basically optimum solution. So those kind of things are done by Pigmo. You can have this multi-objective objective path optimization problems as well. And yeah, that's basically all for Pigmo. Just wanted to show you the optimization problem here. So this is the general form that it utilizes basically. Say for X, you have an upper bound and a lower bound boundaries. You have a cost function or the objective function you're trying to minimize with subject to certain constraints. So these are the kind, like this is the format, or this is the kind of the structure of the optimization problem that Pigmo handles. And like yeah, this is basically a simple model. So yeah, that's all for basically lectures. Next, we have some MCQs. The idea is the same. I'll put them on the screen for 2 minutes, and then I'll discuss the answers. We can start. Okay. So the question is, under which of the following circumstances will you choose heuristics? So heuristics is basically a fancy term for trial and error solutions. So basically, these kind of these genetic algorithms, these evolutionary algorithms, these kind of algorithms are basically heuristic algorithms only. These are used only when you cannot find an optimal solution using like analytical or numerical techniques. So then you put some constraints, you do some guided approach, and you try to solve the problem. So that is what basically heuristics is. So these kind of computational algorithms use heuristics. So you'll use heuristics when the solver use requires a guided approach to solve the problem, or when a sub optimal solution is sufficient. But when you shouldn't do it when you have abundant time. This is not an ideal use case for using heuristics. So yeah, that's uh, moving on to the next question. Please try to think of the reason as well. So yeah, okay. So the question is only the individual with the highest fitness is selected at each step by all evolutionary algorithms, true or false. The answer here is sadly false because you remember this elitism selection. So you have an option to ensure the best individual or the best solutions are always propagated to the next generation. So you have that that power in hand, and you can design your algorithm in such a way that not always the the individual with highest fitness is selected at each step. So yeah, this will be false. You can have certain like previous bias. Moving on to the next one. The question is, which of the following problems are appropriate for evolutionary algorithms? So, evolutionary algorithms, as I said in the beginning only, it's a process of solving complex solutions that you do not have direct solutions to. Basically, complex equations or complex optimizations that you do not have direct solutions to. So, dynamic process control, pattern recognition, and simulation of biological models are good examples to use for evolutionary algorithms. But simple optimizations with very few variables, evolutionary algorithms are not very good at that. So, first three options will be correct. It is not very good at that because it is a trial and error uh, method. So, if you have very few variables and your simple optimization problem, uh, you can use other. There are much better algorithms to be used. Yeah, this is not the use case basically. Moving on to the next one. Okay. The question is genetic algorithms. They are multidimensional direct search methods, which is very true. It follows the survival of fittest theory. Yeah, it follows Darwin theory of natural selection and survival of the fittest, and is based on genetics and natural selection, obviously. So all of them are correct, self-explanatory. And let's move on to the next one. Okay. The question here says you have two vectors, v1 and v2. So these are basically two sets of solutions. One is a, b, c, d, e, and another is p, q, r, s, t. So the question is, which of the following are results of recombination? Oh, I think the answer here, key I have put here is wrong, but it is simple. So if you look carefully, so these first one, A3PRB, 3 is not anywhere between the two vectors, so it is not possible to have this. And if you are increasing, recombination is basically you're swapping out uh, basically solutions, but here you've just combined in the second one. So that is also not the correct answer. The correct answer should be just swapping a few out. So what has happened here? B has been swapped out for P, R has been swapped out for C, E has been swapped out for, oh no, A. Okay, this E is there, D has been swapped out by R. Okay, B and B. Okay, C and R, and D has been swapped out by S. E is still there. So the third one is a possibility. See, let's say the fourth one. B is there, A is there, C is there, D is also there. Just T has been swapped out for E. So this last two options are possible. The first two are not. So the options will be C and D for this one. I'm sorry, I do not have the answer here. So, next question. So this is very evident. It's not a MATLAB package, it's a Python package. And rest of it is true. It can be parallelized, it can be used for single objective function or multi-objective function, both. Let's move on. This is also kind of an obvious one. All are correct for this one. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, we have a couple more. Okay. Okay, let's see the question. If gene A and B are represented by binary vectors 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 and 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, which of the following possible results of a single point crossover between gene A and gene B? So, see, first option is correct. So you had uh, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, and 1, 1, 0. This is single point crossover. So this basically the last one here is replaced by 0 and here the last 0 is replaced by 1. So first one is true. Next one is 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0. Second option. So 0, 1, 0, 1. In the second last place, it is basically the second last places are switched. 0, 1 and 1, 0 are switched. So yeah, this is also true. And this option, 0, 1 here in the second place, it is swapped. So it becomes 0, 0, 0, then 1, then the second last place is swapped. Yeah, so A, B, and C. See, 0, 1, 0. I'm not very sure about this one, but yeah, this is a crossover, but I'm not sure if it is a single point or not. Mm, yeah, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, yeah. Basically, it is swapped from the second position. See, The second position, it's 10101. It is in the second option, say 10101. And from the second position, this is 00110. This is 00110 from the second position to start. Yeah. So yeah, these three are correct. A, B, and D. Okay. Moving on to the next one. This is a pretty straightforward one. Differential evolution and evolution strategies are the examples of evolutionary algorithms because yeah, these two contain the word evolution in it. Okay, jokes apart. So yeah, that was it for today. So we'll wrap it up here and we'll meet next week, same time. Thank you. Stop.